If you have ever cried in front of someone and then spent the next hour hating yourself for it, listen carefully, because by the end of this, you will understand why that moment was not a weakness at all, and you will never apologize for it again. Here is the trap almost everyone falls into. The moment tears show up, the brain screams one instruction. Stop it. Hide it. Turn away. Clear your throat. Apologize. Laugh it off. Do anything except let another human being witness what is happening inside you. That instinct feels like self-protection. It is actually self-sabotage. And by the time we are finished, you will see exactly why the instinct to suppress is the real threat, not the tears themselves. Let us start with a claim that will make some of you angry. The people who cry easily in this room are not the fragile ones. They are running a more advanced processing system than everyone else, and the people who never cry, who pride themselves on being unshakable, are often the ones least equipped to actually handle what life throws at them. Sit with that for a second before you decide I am wrong. There is a real documented trait in psychology called high sensitivity, sometimes labeled the highly sensitive person profile. It is not a diagnosis, it is not a disorder, it is a nervous system variation, and researchers estimate that somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 3 people carry it. That is not a rare glitch. That is a massive percentage of the population walking around believing they are broken because nobody ever explained the mechanism to them. Here is the mechanism, stripped of jargon. In a highly sensitive nervous system, the limbic structures, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotional signals, run hotter. Not damaged, not weaker, hotter. Every emotional input, a sad film, a sharp tone of voice, a memory that surfaces without warning, gets processed with more depth and more intensity than it does in the average brain. You are not failing to control your emotions. You are running a higher resolution scan on every emotional signal that hits you in real time without asking permission. And here is the part nobody tells you, the part that flips this entire topic on its head. That same wiring that makes you cry easily is wired into the same neural circuitry that produces empathy. The systems overlap. They are not separate switches, they are the same switch. Which means the people who tear up during a stranger's story, who feel a lump in their throat during someone else's bad news, are frequently the same people who read a room accurately, who catch the tremor in a voice before anyone else notices it, who sense when a friend is pretending to be fine when they are not. That is not softness. That is a surveillance system most people do not have installed. Now, before we go further, deploy phase 1 of the protocol, because you need this before the tears ever start again. Phase 1 is naming the mechanism out loud in your own mind the instant you feel your throat tighten. Not fighting it, not narrating it as failure. Just naming it. Say internally, this is my system processing something real, and processing is not the same as breaking. That single reframe, spoken silently in the moment, changes the entire trajectory of what happens next, because shame accelerates tears and understanding slows them down. If you want more weapons like this one, weapons that turn what the world calls a flaw into a functioning instrument, this is exactly the kind of psychological armor this channel builds piece by piece, and subscribing simply means you keep receiving the blueprint instead of losing it in the feed. Consider it standing maintenance on a shield you are already wearing, whether you asked for it or not. Let us talk about what crying actually does to your body, because this is where the intuitive reaction becomes the biggest error of all. Most people treat tears as a leak, a malfunction, something to be mopped up and hidden. Tears, triggered by emotion, carry a different chemical signature than tears triggered by a cut onion. In behavioral science, emotional tears are believed to help carry stress hormones, including cortisol, out of the system as the body regulates itself. That means the moment you cry is often the moment your body may be actively lowering its own alarm level. You are not losing composure. You are running a built-in reset function that the calm, stoic, never-cry crowd simply does not have access to in the same way. We have been taught that Holding it together means strength, and letting it out means collapse. But if crying functions as a release valve for stress chemistry, then the person who never cries is not stronger. They are simply pressurized differently, and pressure that never releases has to go somewhere. It shows up as tension, as irritability, as health problems years down the line that nobody ever traces back to a decade of swallowed tears. But this is not the worst part of what the suppression crowd does to themselves. The worst part is what happens to their read on other people. When you shut down your own emotional signal, you also dull your ability to receive everyone else's. Deploy phase 2 of the protocol here, because this is the piece that separates people who merely feel deeply from people who use that depth as an actual advantage. Phase 2 is channeling the sensitivity outward on purpose once a day by consciously naming one emotional signal you picked up from someone else that a less sensitive person would have missed. A change in texting pattern, a pause before someone answers a simple question, a smile that does not reach the eyes. Write it down if you have to. This trains the same circuitry that makes you cry easily into a precision instrument instead of an uncontrolled leak. Here is a number that surprises almost everyone. Large-scale international surveys, drawing on data from more than 7,000 people across 37 countries, found that women cry on average somewhere between 30 and 64 times per year, and men somewhere between 5 and 17 times per year. Whatever your number is, whatever side of that range you land on, you are not an outlier hiding a secret defect. You are a data point inside a well-documented human matrix, and the shame you have been carrying was manufactured by silence, not by evidence. There is also a biological layer beneath the psychological one, and understanding it disarms one more piece of unnecessary guilt. Hormonal factors, particularly a hormone called prolactin, influence how easily the tear response activates, which is part of why crying frequency can shift with hormonal cycles. On top of that, sleep deprivation and elevated stress load both lower the threshold for an emotional trigger to reach the surface. So the nights you cried more easily were not proof that you were falling apart. They were often simply proof that your nervous system was running on insufficient rest and elevated cortisol, a completely explainable state, not a character flaw. Now here's where we assemble the full protocol, because knowing the mechanism without a script to run when it activates is just trivia, and trivia does not protect you in the moment someone in a meeting, a family dinner, or a group chat tries to weaponize your tears against you. Phase 1. Name the mechanism silently the instant the throat tightens. This is processing, not breaking. Phase 2. Once daily, convert the sensitivity outward by naming one emotional signal in someone else that a duller nervous system would have missed. This turns raw sensitivity into functioning intelligence. Phase 3, and this is the one most people never learn. Prepare a single, flat, unbothered line to deploy the moment someone tries to use your tears as evidence against you in an argument. Every attempt to use your tears against you is a bid for payment, an investment they are hoping you will make in your own shame. Phase 3 refuses that investment outright, with a line as simple as, "I notice this affects me, and I am still making the same point," said calmly, without apology, without over-explaining. That sentence does two things at once. It refuses to hand the other person the narrative that your emotion equals your defeat, and it keeps the actual argument, the actual boundary, fully intact. This is behavioral physics in its purest form. You do not have to stop the tears to win the exchange. You only have to refuse to let the tears become the subject. That is the checkmate most people never see coming because they have spent their entire lives believing that visible emotion is the same as losing control of the room. It is not. The person who can cry and still finish their sentence, still hold their boundary, still make their point without flinching, is not the fragile one in that exchange. They are the one running the most sophisticated system in the room, fully online, fully felt, and still functional, so the next time your eyes fill up during a hard conversation, do not treat it as a malfunction to be hidden. Recognize it for what the evidence actually shows it to be, a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, clearing stress chemistry, reading signals other people miss, and giving you access to a depth of connection that a permanently guarded person will never reach. That is not a crack in your armor. That is the armor working exactly as designed. Keep it on. Do not let anyone convince you that softness and strength live on opposite ends of the spectrum, because the evidence says otherwise. And do not let a single person in your life pull the strings attached to something they never bothered to understand.